you get the argument as well from them being mosques. Look, I respect everyone's religion and everyone's right.
And, these conversions are typically subject to standard planning procedures.
A woman in Leicester faces criminal charges, not for vandalism, not for harassment, but for expressing her views about a local pub being converted into a mosque. Over 2,500 local residents signed a petition against this conversion, yet their voices were ignored by the council. This isn't just about a building changing hands, it's about what happens when you speak out in today's Britain. Police are now monitoring social media posts, ready to arrest those who step over an increasingly blurry line. Is this the new normal for freedom of speech in the UK? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. The line between criminal behaviour and legitimate criticism in Britain has become dangerously thin. A Leicester woman discovered this reality when police arrived at her door. Not for any physical threat or violence, but for comments she posted online about a local pub conversion. This case forces us to ask.
Pub in Gravesend causing a bit of an uproar amongst residents because there are plans to turn it into a mosque. And this is also coming at the same time.
Again, I'd like to sort of understand, why is there such an outrage when it comes to it being a mosque?
What exactly constitutes a criminal offence in modern Britain? The Glen pub sits at the centre of this controversy. This isn't just any building. It's a community landmark with deep historical significance for Leicester residents. When plans emerged to convert it into a mosque, the community response was overwhelming. Over 2,500 locals signed a petition opposing the conversion. Nearly 900 formal objections were submitted through official channels. The message from residents couldn't have been clearer, yet Leicester City Council approved the conversion anyway. The decision raises serious questions about democratic processes. What value do 2,500 signatures hold if they can be so easily dismissed? When 900 formal objections fail to sway councillors, what avenues remain for citizens to influence decisions affecting their communities?
Problem with turning a pub that isn't being used, that hasn't been sold to another landlord, into a mosque.
Including public consultations, even with some sort of demonstration against it from the community.
The woman's arrest centres on social media comments she made regarding the conversion. The police drew a distinction that demands scrutiny. They claimed opinions about use of the building aren't police matters, but inciting criminal activity is. This distinction creates a grey area where legitimate criticism might be reinterpreted as criminal incitement. British authorities are actively monitoring social media for such comments. The Communications Act 2003 provides the legal framework for these actions, but its application seems increasingly broad. The police openly admitted to scanning social media, ready to act on what they perceived as threatening. This surveillance raises profound concerns about free expression in digital spaces. The timing of this arrest deserves particular attention. Why now? Was this action meant to silence other community members who might speak out? The message seems clear. Disagree too strongly, and you might face criminal charges. This case represents a troubling escalation in how authorities handle community opposition. We've moved from ignoring public input to potentially criminalising it. When expressing dissent about local development becomes grounds for arrest.
Look, I'm always going to champion pubs. I grew up in pubs. My family has run pubs for decades. And
Fahima, pubs are so culturally important to Brits. Surely you can see why people would be upset to see it turned into a mosque when they would prefer to have it as a pub.
The fundamental relationship between citizens and their government changes. This arrest doesn't exist in isolation. It occurs against a backdrop of shifting priorities around immigration and integration in Britain. As police monitor social media for dissenting opinions, politicians are simultaneously adjusting their rhetoric on these issues. The contradiction reveals much about the current state of free speech in the UK, officially protected but practically constrained when it touches sensitive cultural topics. While a Leicester woman faces criminal charges for social media comments, Britain's political landscape undergoes a transformation that cannot be ignored. This arrest represents just one example of a broader pattern, a systematic monitoring of speech around cultural and religious topics that clashes with the government's newfound tough talk on immigration. Keir Starmer's recent migration policy announcements demand scrutiny. The timing speaks volumes, coming only after Reform UK applied significant electoral pressure and public concerns about migration reached fever pitch. Starmer now presents himself as the champion of controlled borders and proper integration, a stark departure from Labour's historical positions. The specifics of Starmer's plan suggest a dramatic shift: a 10-year residency requirement before migrants can access benefits, tighter visa regulations, and an emphasis on learning English and embracing British values. The rhetoric mirrors conservative talking points that Labour previously criticised as divisive and xenophobic. This sudden conversion raises legitimate questions about sincerity. Consider the numbers. Migration to the UK nearly tripled between 2016 and 2023. These policies now emerge not from principle, but political necessity, as Labour attempts to neutralise immigration as an electoral vulnerability. The question becomes whether these announcements represent genuine change or political theatre crafted to appease public concern without meaningful action.
You get the argument as well from them being mosques. Look, I respect everyone's religion and everyone's right.
And, these conversions are typically subject to standard planning procedures.
The contradiction between national rhetoric and local enforcement creates a troubling picture. As Starmer speaks about integration and British values, authorities arrest citizens who express concerns about cultural changes in their communities. The government speaks of toughness while criminalising those who voice the very concerns that prompted these policy shifts. This disconnect reveals the true state of free speech in modern Britain. Citizens are encouraged to embrace abstract notions of proper integration, while facing arrest for specific criticisms about how integration is happening in their neighbourhoods. The message becomes clear: support integration in theory, but don't question specific examples in practice. The Leicester case exposes this fundamental inconsistency. Politicians make speeches about cultural cohesion, while police monitor social media for dissenters. The state simultaneously acknowledges public concerns through policy announcements, while criminalising individual expressions of those same concerns. These parallel developments, arrests for speech alongside policy shifts on immigration, signal a transformation in Britain's approach to dissent and cultural change. The space for legitimate debate narrows as authorities determine which opinions qualify as acceptable criticism and which cross into criminal territory. What remains unclear is whether citizens still possess the right to influence how their communities evolve in this new political landscape. The arrest in Leicester represents something far more significant than a dispute about a pub conversion. It exposes the shrinking space for public debate in modern Britain. When expressing concerns about cultural changes in your neighbourhood carries the risk of police at your door, we face a fundamental question about freedom of speech. This contradiction strikes at the heart of British democracy. The government toughens its immigration rhetoric, while authorities criminalise citizens who voice the very concerns that prompted these policy shifts. Watch the Glen pub case carefully. It may well determine whether we're witnessing isolated incidents or the emergence of a new normal where the wrong opinion online leads to criminal charges.